The conference hall of Galactic Council Station stretched wider than any structure humans had built on Earth. Crystalline walls curved upward into a dome that displayed the stars beyond, reminding everyone that they floated in neutral space, far from any homeworld. Ambassador Lisa Morgan sat in the human delegation section, her hands folded neatly on the smooth table before her. She had learned long ago that showing emotion in these meetings accomplished nothing. Captain Daniel Cooper stood behind her, his uniform crisp and his expression calm. He watched the various alien species move about the chamber, with the practiced eye of someone who had spent 15 years learning their ways. The Krell delegation entered last, as they always did, their scaled bodies reflecting the light in shades of deep green and black. Ambassador Vaxtor walked with the confidence of a predator who had never known real challenge. Lisa straightened her papers, though she had memorized every word. This was her 48th formal complaint to the Council. 48 times she had stood before these beings and asked for justice. 48 times she had been patient, diplomatic, and professional. The Velnar mediator, Chisha, called the session to order with a series of clicks from her mandibles. Her insectoid body settled into the mediator's seat, multiple eyes scanning the assembly. "The human delegation has requested another hearing," Chisha announced, her translator converting the clicks into standard galactic. "Ambassador Morgan, you may proceed." Lisa stood, feeling Daniel's supportive presence behind her. She activated the display panel, and holographic images filled the air above the council floor. 3 days ago, the Krell warship, Destroyer's Pride, fired upon the human medical vessel Hope's Journey in the Outer Rim sector, Lisa began, her voice steady. The medical ship was clearly marked with universal non-combatant symbols and was transmitting civilian identification codes. It carried vaccines and medical supplies to the human colony on Archer's world, where an outbreak has killed hundreds. The images showed the wreckage, debris scattered across space. Escape pods that had never launched. 200 humans died in this attack, Lisa continued. 63 were medical personnel, 42 were volunteers, 38 were children traveling with their parents. Daniel watched the other delegations. The Thraxian representatives chittered among themselves. The Mordak observer appeared bored. The Zanari ambassador was reviewing something on his personal display, not even watching Lisa's presentation. Vaxtor rose from his seat, not bothering to wait for permission to speak. His scowled head tilted in what might have been amusement. "The human vessel entered a restricted military zone," he said, his voice a deep rumble. "Our forces responded appropriately to an unidentified contact. That the humans choose to send their young into dangerous space is not the Krell Empire's concern." Lisa's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Daniel noticed. He had worked with her for 8 years and had never seen that small crack in her composure. "The sector was not designated as restricted until 6 hours after the attack," Lisa replied, pulling up navigation charts. "The Hope's Journey followed approved trade routes and transmitted clearance codes every 15 minutes. Your warship did not attempt communication before opening fire." "Your complaint is noted," Chisha said, already moving on. "The Council will review the evidence and—" "The Council has reviewed 47 previous complaints," Lisa interrupted, and Daniel straightened. Lisa never interrupted. "For 8 months, Krell vessels have harassed human ships, destroyed cargo, and violated every treaty regarding civilian transport. I have presented evidence. I have requested mediation. I have followed every protocol this council established." The chamber grew quiet. Other species began paying attention now, perhaps sensing something unusual in the human ambassador's tone. "And what would you have us do?" Vaxtor asked, spreading his clawed hands. "The Krell Empire will not be dictated to by a species that has been in space for barely a century. You are prey animals playing at being predators. Your endless talking and paper filing proves this." Several delegations made sounds that their translators converted to laughter. The Mordak representative slapped his table in amusement. Lisa stood very still. Daniel could see the tablet in her hands, the one displaying pictures of the victims. He could see the names, the faces, the children. "I am filing formal notice," Lisa said, and her voice had changed. It was quieter now, but something in it made even Vaxtor's laughter die. "The United Earth government considers the destruction of Hope's Journey an act of war. You have 48 hours to deliver a formal apology, reparations to the victims' families, and the surrender of the Destroyer's Pride's command crew for trial."
The chamber erupted.
Delegates shouted across the floor. Chisha's clicks became rapid and sharp as she tried to restore order. Vaxtor leaned forward, his teeth showing in what his species used as a smile. "Or what, little human? Will you file a 49th complaint? Will you write another strongly worded letter?" Lisa gathered her papers slowly, methodically. When she looked up at the Krell ambassador, Daniel saw something he had never seen in her eyes before. Not anger, not rage, something colder. "For 15 years, we have been patient," Lisa said. "We have been diplomatic. We have followed your rules and respected your customs. We have absorbed insults and ignored provocations because we believed in the principles this council claims to represent." She turned to address the entire assembly. "You have mistaken our patience for weakness. You have confused our preference for peace with inability to do otherwise. In 48 hours, if the Krell Empire has not met our demands, you will learn the difference." Lisa walked toward the exit, Daniel falling into step beside her. Behind them, the council dissolved into chaos. Species demanded explanations. Vaxtor was declaring human threats meaningless. As the doors closed behind them, Daniel finally spoke. "They don't believe you." Lisa looked at the tablet still in her hand. A picture of a 6-year-old girl who would never reach the colony she had been so excited to see. "They will," Lisa said quietly. Dr. Helen Carter stood before a group of alien academics in the observation lounge of the council station. Through the wide windows, ships of 100 species came and went, oblivious to what was building in the shadows. The Zanari professor across from her was reviewing footage of Lisa Morgan's ultimatum with what his species considered amusement. "Your ambassador makes bold claims," the professor said. "But humans have been part of this council for 15 years.
We know your nature. You talk.
You negotiate. You file complaints. This is what prey species do when they lack the strength to act." Helen set down her cup of earth coffee and looked at him directly. "May I tell you something about human history?" The professor gestured for her to continue, clearly expecting another boring lecture about human achievements. 300 years ago, my species was killing itself," Helen began. "We had wars that destroyed entire cities in single moments. We created weapons that could end all life on our planet. Millions died in conflicts that spread across continents. We were very, very good at violence." A Thraxian student leaned forward, suddenly interested. "But your records showed decades of peace before you reached space." "Yes," Helen agreed. "Because we made a choice. We looked at what we had done to ourselves and decided to be better. We chose patience over aggression. We chose diplomacy over war. But choosing peace is not the same as forgetting how to fight." The Zanari professor waved a dismissive appendage. "Ancient history. The humans, we know, are soft, accommodating. Your own ambassador has filed dozens of complaints rather than taking action." Helen pulled up her personal display and showed them something. "Do you know what this is?" The image showed massive structures in orbit around Earth, sleek vessels that dwarfed most ships in the known galaxy. "We thought those were colony ships," the Thraxian student said slowly. "They can serve as colony ships," Helen confirmed. "They can also serve as warships. Every human vessel in space is built with dual purposes. We explored the galaxy in ships designed to protect us if exploration went wrong." The lounge had grown quiet. Other alien academics were drifting over to listen. Halfway across the station, Admiral Peter Grant stood in the command center of the Earth Defense Fleet's coordination hub. The room was small and unmarked, tucked into a corner of the human diplomatic section that most aliens never saw. Display screens covered 3 walls, showing the positions of every human ship within 100 light-years. Commander Jake Matthews looked up from his tactical station. "The civilian evacuations from Krell border zones are complete. All non-essential personnel are moving to safe distance." "And our forces?" Peter asked. 7 battle groups are in position. "The Krell haven't noticed our ships repositioning. They think we're just running scared like everyone else they've bullied." Peter studied the strategic display. Months of careful observation had given them detailed maps of Krell military installations, patrol routes, and response times. The Krell had been so confident in human weakness that they never bothered to hide their movements. "How long until the deadline expires?" Peter asked. 43 hours and 16 minutes, Jake replied. "Sir, the Krell are broadcasting across their networks. They're calling our ultimatum the funniest thing they've heard in years." "They're not going to respond." Peter had expected this. He had been part of the military for 38 years. He had studied every war in human history, learned every lesson his species had paid for in blood. He knew what happened when people mistook restraint for weakness. "Then in 43 hours, we teach them why restraint is a choice," Peter said quietly. In her quarters, Lisa Morgan sat in the darkness, staring at the wall display. She had changed it to show pictures from the Hope's journey. The crew had sent regular updates during their voyage, excited messages about the vaccines they carried, about the lives they would save. The children had drawn pictures of what they thought Archer's world would look like. Her communication panel chimed. Daniel's face appeared. The council is sending delegations to our quarters, he said. They want to discuss the situation. They're using words like overreaction and disproportionate response. Tell them the time for discussion ended when 200 of our people died and the council laughed, Lisa replied. Daniel hesitated. Lisa, they're not taking this seriously. They think we're bluffing. I know. Are we? Bluffing, I mean. Lisa looked at the pictures on her wall. A young girl holding a toy spaceship. A doctor smiling as he loaded medical supplies. A mother holding her infant son. What do you think, Daniel? He was quiet for a moment. I think we've been patient for 15 years. I think we've tried everything the right way. I think they've mistaken our civilization for weakness. Then you have your answer. Back in the observation lounge, Helen was still talking to the growing crowd of alien academics. The Zanari professor looked less certain now. You're saying humans are warriors pretending to be diplomats? He asked. No, Helen corrected. We're diplomats who remember how to be warriors when we must. There's a difference. A warrior seeks conflict. A diplomat avoids it. But a wise diplomat knows that sometimes peace must be defended with strength. A Velnar observer spoke up, her mandibles clicking nervously. But the Krell Empire is vast. They have thousands of warships. Surely humans cannot believe they can challenge such a force. Helen smiled sadly. The Krell have thousands of warships built by a species that has never lost a war. They're designed to intimidate and overwhelm weaker opponents. Do you know what human warships are designed for? No one answered. They're designed by a species that has fought itself for thousands of years. Every human conflict taught us something new about warfare. We learned from every defeat and every victory. When we finally reached space, we brought all those lessons with us. Helen stood and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful flow of traffic around the station. The Krell think humans are weak because we choose diplomacy first. They don't understand that we choose it because we know exactly what the alternative costs.
We've paid that price before.
The Thraxian student's voice was small. What happens when the deadline expires? Helen turned back to face them, and her expression was grave. Then the galaxy learns why every species should run when humans finally lose their patience. The deadline expired at exactly 0600 hours Council Standard Time. For 3 minutes, nothing happened. Across the galaxy, species who had been watching with amusement began to relax. The humans had been bluffing, after all, just as everyone expected. Then the sensors lit up. Lieutenant Sophie Barnes sat in the cockpit of her fighter, feeling the familiar hum of the engines around her. Her squadron floated in the darkness of space, powered down and invisible to Krell sensors. They had been waiting here for 18 hours, silent as ghosts. All units, this is command, Admiral Peter Grant's voice came through her helmet. The deadline has passed with no Krell response. You are cleared to engage. Show them what humanity can do. Sophie's fingers moved across her controls. Around her, 200 other fighters came to life simultaneously. Their engines burned bright in the darkness, and they accelerated toward the Krell military station ahead. The Krell defense coordinator saw them coming 3 seconds before the first missiles struck. He barely had time to shout a warning before the station's shield generators exploded in brilliant flashes. Human fighters moved through the gaps with precision that made the attack look choreographed. They weren't flying like explorers or merchants. They flew like pilots who had trained for this their entire lives. Sophie pulled her fighter into a tight spiral, avoiding defensive fire that came too slowly. The Krell had built their defenses to handle conventional attacks, straightforward approaches that followed predictable patterns. Human tactics didn't follow any patterns, the Krell recognized. Blue Squadron, hit the communications array, Sophie called out. Red Squadron, those weapon platforms on the northern axis. Gold Squadron, you're with me on the command center. Her fighter dove beneath the station's plane of reference, coming up from an angle the Krell defenders hadn't anticipated. Her targeting computer locked onto the command center's supports, and she released her payload. The explosions rippled along the structure's spine. At 6 other locations across Krell space, similar scenes played out. Human battle groups emerged from hiding spots they had carefully chosen over months of silent observation. Krell Fleet Commander Drakner watched his tactical display in horror as reports flooded in from every direction. How many ships do the humans have? He demanded. His tactical officer's voice shook. We're counting at least 40 capital ships and 300 support vessels. Commander, they're hitting all our major installations at once. This isn't a raid. This is a coordinated military campaign. Draknor had fought in 17 wars. He had crushed opponents who outnumbered him. He had never seen an attack like this. The humans weren't just fighting. They were fighting with a level of organization and tactical awareness that spoke of serious military tradition. "Deploy the home fleet," he ordered. "Show these prey animals what real warriors can do." The Krell home fleet was the pride of their empire, 200 warships that had never known defeat. They moved to intercept the human forces with the confidence of predators who had dominated the galaxy for centuries. Captain Daniel Cooper watched from the bridge of the Earth Defense Ship Resolution as the Krell fleet approached. He had left his diplomatic uniform behind. Now he wore the dark blue of Earth's military, and the weight of command sat easily on his shoulders. "They're forming their standard attack pattern," his tactical officer reported, "expecting us to meet them head-on." Daniel smiled. "Have we ever done what they expect?" "All ships execute Pattern Sierra 7. The human fleet suddenly scattered in a dozen different directions. The Krell formation, built for overwhelming frontal assault, found nothing to assault. Before they could adjust, human ships were attacking from above, below, and both flanks simultaneously. "They're trying to regroup," the tactical officer said. "Don't let them," Daniel replied calmly. "Focus fire on their command ships. Take out their coordination and they'll fall apart." On the Galactic Council station, aliens crowded around display screens showing the battle feeds. What they saw shocked them into silence. The peaceful humans who had spent 15 years filing complaints were dismantling one of the galaxy's most powerful militaries with terrifying efficiency. Chisha, the Velnar mediator, watched with growing dread as human forces destroyed a Krell orbital fortress in under 20 minutes. The structure had been built to withstand months of siege. The humans had reduced it to debris before the Krell could mount an effective defense. "This cannot be the same species," a Thraxian delegate whispered. "Where did they learn to fight like this?" An elderly Mordak observer spoke quietly. They remembered. The battle for the Krell home system raged for 6 hours. Sophie's fighter group had moved on to their third target, a military shipyard that produced Krell warships. She watched as human capital ships positioned themselves with careful precision, their weapons targeting specific structural points. "Target the support beams," came the order from the fleet coordinator. "Disable it. Don't destroy it." "We're not here to kill unnecessarily." Even in the fury of battle, the humans maintained discipline. They struck military targets with devastating accuracy while avoiding civilian areas. When Krell crew members abandoned damaged ships, human vessels moved to recover the escape pods. Draknor watched his fleet break apart under the sustained human assault. They had destroyed 18 human ships, but lost over 80 of their own. The humans fought with a ferocity that seemed at odds with their reputation, but also with a restraint that confused him. "They're not trying to annihilate us," his tactical officer said, shocked. "They're trying to disable our military capability." "What kind of enemy does that?" Draknor asked. "One that remembers what it's like to lose," the officer replied quietly. Within 72 hours, the Krell Empire had lost 40% of its military infrastructure. Their fleet was shattered, their defenses were in ruins, and the humans showed no signs of stopping. Across the galaxy, other aggressive species watched in stunned silence. The Thraxian clans quietly began offering apologies for past trade disputes. The Mordak hegemony suddenly discovered they owed humans reparations for incidents going back years. And on the council station, Ambassador Lisa Morgan sat in her quarters receiving reports from Admiral Grant. She felt no joy in the victories, only sadness that it had come to this. "They understand now," Daniel said, standing beside her. "Do they?" Lisa asked, looking out at the stars. "Or are they just afraid? Maybe fear is the beginning of understanding." The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened while human warships still patrolled the wreckage of Krell military stations. Ambassador Lisa Morgan walked into the chamber with the same calm demeanor she had always carried. The human who had filed 48 complaints without raising her voice had orchestrated a military campaign that changed the balance of power in the galaxy. Chisha called the session to order, her mandibles clicking with nervous energy. "The Council recognizes the severity of recent events. We gathered to discuss terms and prevent further conflict." Lisa took her place at the human delegation table. Daniel stood behind her, and she noticed how other species gave them extra space now. Fear changed many things. "Before we discuss terms," Lisa said, activating her display, "I want to show you something." The holographic screens filled with images, not of battles or destroyed ships, but of documents. Complaint after complaint filed over 8 months. Each one detailed Krell violations. Each one requested mediation. Each one had been dismissed or delayed. This is complaint number 12, Lisa said, highlighting one document. Filed after Krell vessels attacked a human cargo ship carrying food supplies. 3 crew members died. The council reviewed it for 6 weeks before determining jurisdiction was unclear. She moved to another document. Complaint number 27. Krell warships fired on a human research vessel studying nebula formations in neutral space. 7 scientists died. The council suggested both parties share responsibility for being in a disputed region, though no dispute existed before the attack. The chamber was silent. Delegates who had laughed at her warnings now looked at their own records with growing discomfort. Complaint number 48, Lisa continued, and her voice remained steady even as she displayed images of the Hope's journey. 200 civilians, including 38 children, murdered while carrying medical supplies. The council did not even schedule a hearing before the Krell ambassador mocked our losses. She turned to face the assembled species. You gave us 2 choices. Accept that human lives meant nothing, or show you that we would not accept it. We chose the only path you left open. Vaxtor stood, and Lisa noticed his movements were different now, less confident, more careful. The Krell Empire acknowledges that mistakes were made. We propose immediate cessation of hostilities and negotiated settlement. Is that what you call the systematic murder of my people? Mistakes? Danielle watched the other delegations. They were learning what Helen Carter had tried to teach them. Patience was not weakness. It was a choice humans made every day, and they could unmake that choice when necessary. A Thraxian delegate rose hesitantly. Ambassador Morgan, the Thraxian clans wish to formally apologize for past incidents involving human vessels in our territory. We have prepared full reparations and punishment for those responsible. Another delegate stood, then another. Species that had dismissed human concerns for years suddenly discovered urgent need to make amends. Lisa watched the parade of apologies with no satisfaction, only weariness. Do you apologize because you understand what you did wrong? She asked them. Or because you fear what we might do if you don't? No one answered immediately. Finally, an elderly Mordak delegate spoke. I have lived for 200 years. I have seen many species rise and fall. I thought I understood humans. I was wrong. He pulled up historical files on his display. I researched your species after the first battle reports arrived. Your world wars. Your conflicts. The weapons you created that could destroy your own planet. You were so violent that you nearly eliminated yourselves. Other delegates began accessing human historical records. Images of ancient and modern human warfare spread across dozens of screens. Battles fought with primitive weapons and advanced technology.
Wars that killed millions.
Conflicts that reshaped continents. You stopped fighting each other and reached for the stars, the Mordak continued. We thought this meant you had become weak, that civilization had made you soft. We didn't understand that you chose peace because you knew the true cost of war. Helen Carter entered the chamber from the observation gallery. Lisa had requested her presence, knowing her perspective would matter now. May I address the council? Helen asked. Chisha gestured approval, grateful for any voice that might ease the tension. Helen stepped forward, her academic demeanor unchanged despite the circumstances. For 15 years, I have studied human integration into galactic society. I tried to warn my colleagues what they were misunderstanding about my species. She pulled up her research files. Humans are not naturally peaceful. We are naturally tribal, territorial, and capable of extreme violence. But we are also capable of learning from our mistakes. We spent thousands of years fighting before we finally understood that cooperation served us better than conflict. A young Zenari delegate spoke up, but you became peaceful. You joined the council. You followed our rules. We followed your rules because we believed they would work, Helen corrected. We gave diplomacy every chance to succeed. 48 chances, to be exact. When those rules failed to protect our people, we remembered the older rules we had learned long ago. She looked around the chamber. Every human child learns about our wars. We teach them the horrors we committed against each other. We don't hide our violent past. We study it so we never forget why we chose a different path. But we also never forget how to walk the old path if we must. Earth Defense Fleet has ceased offensive operations. Krell military installations have been disabled but not destroyed. Krell civilian infrastructure has not been touched. We could have done far worse, but we chose not to. She paused, letting that sink in. This is the difference between humans and what you thought we were. We don't want conquest. We don't seek domination. We want to live in peace. But we will defend our people, and we will not allow our patience to be mistaken for permission to harm us. Vaxtor stepped forward. and for the first time since Lisa had known him, the Krell ambassador bowed his head. The Krell Empire offers formal apology for the destruction of Hope's journey and all previous attacks on human vessels. We will provide full reparations to victims' families and surrender those responsible for trial under human law. Additionally, he continued, clearly uncomfortable with every word, we request that Earth Defense Fleet share tactical assessment of our military vulnerabilities so we may understand how completely we were defeated. Daniel raised an eyebrow. That was an unusual request. Lisa considered it. Why? Because, Vaxtor said slowly, if humans could dismantle our forces so thoroughly, we need to understand our weaknesses before someone else exploits them. And because perhaps the humans can teach us what real strength looks like. Around the chamber, other species began nodding. Fear was beginning to transform into something else. Not quite respect yet, but the foundation for it. 2 weeks after the ceasefire, Captain Daniel Cooper stood in the command center of the Krell Military Academy on their home world. Officers who had once dismissed humans as prey animals now studied tactical displays showing exactly how their defenses had been dismantled. The silence in the room spoke louder than any words could. Your forces hit us from 7 locations simultaneously, a Krell tactical instructor said, pointing to the holographic map. We had no intelligence suggesting you had positioned assets in these regions. How did you conceal such a large deployment? Daniel gestured to the display. We didn't conceal it. Your reconnaissance saw our ships moving through those sectors for months. You dismissed them as cargo vessels and colony transports because that's what they appeared to be. They were warships disguised as civilian craft? Another officer asked. No, Daniel corrected. They were civilian craft that could serve as warships when needed. Every human vessel in space is built with dual purposes. We don't separate our civilian and military capabilities the way you do. A colony ship that can't defend its colonists isn't much use to us. The Krell officers exchanged glances. Their entire military philosophy was being challenged. On the council station, Lisa Morgan met with Chisha in a private observation room. The Velnar mediator looked exhausted, her multiple eyes dim with fatigue. The council wishes to establish new protocols for addressing grievances, Chisha said. We failed you. We failed to understand that every species has limits. Lisa looked out at the stars beyond the window. You failed to understand that patience is a gift, not an obligation. When someone gives you their patience, you should respect it, not exploit it. How do we prevent this from happening again? Listen when species tell you something matters to them, Lisa replied simply. We filed 48 complaints. Each one should have been a warning that we were reaching our limit. Instead, you waited until we had no choice but to act. Chisha's mandibles clicked softly. The council has voted to make you chief mediator for military disputes. Your species understands both war and peace better than we realized. Lisa turned to her. I don't want that position. I never wanted any of this. I wanted to save 200 lives on a medical ship. I know, Chisha said gently. That's why you're the right choice. Admiral Peter Grant walked through the shipyards orbiting Earth, watching as the battle groups returned home. Crews disembarked to celebrations, but Peter felt no triumph. He had commanded forces that had devastated an empire. The speed and efficiency of their victory should have felt satisfying. Instead, it felt heavy. Commander Jake Matthews joined him on the observation deck. The repairs are underway on the damaged ships. We lost 18 vessels total, with 473 casualties. The Krell lost over 3,000 ships and tens of thousands of personnel. We knew the cost before we started, Peter said quietly. That's the difference between us and them. The Krell started wars without counting the price. We counted every possible cost and decided our people's lives were worth defending. Do you think we're done fighting? Jake asked. Peter watched a damaged cruiser slowly dock at the repair station. For now. The galaxy understands us better, but understanding today doesn't guarantee peace tomorrow. We'll need to remain ready. Helen Carter published her complete study titled Human Patience, a Choice Not a Trait, and it became required reading for every diplomatic academy in known space. She spent her days now consulting with species who wanted to understand the humans better, to avoid making the same mistakes the Krell had made. A young Thraxian student approached her after one lecture. Dr. Carter, if humans are so capable of violence, how do you control it? How do you choose peace? Helen smiled sadly. We remember. Every human child learns about our wars, our mistakes, our capacity for cruelty. We teach them these things not to make them proud, but to make them careful. We remember the cost of violence so thoroughly that we choose alternatives whenever possible. But you also remember how to fight, the student said. Yes, because sometimes the most peaceful option is to be strong enough that no one dares test you. We tried being weak once, back when we first joined the council. We thought showing our peaceful nature would earn respect. It earned contempt instead. Now we've shown that our peace comes from strength, not weakness. 6 months after the conflict ended, Ambassador Vaxtor requested a private meeting with Lisa Morgan. They met in a neutral garden on the council station, surrounded by plants from a dozen different worlds. I have come to deliver the final reparations, Vaxtor said, offering her a data tablet. Every family affected by our actions has been compensated according to human law. The officers responsible for the Hope's Journey massacre have been sentenced by your courts. Lisa accepted the tablet but didn't look at it. Money and justice don't bring back the dead. No, Vaxtor agreed. Nothing can. I wanted to tell you personally that I was wrong. About humans. About strength. About what it means to be powerful in this galaxy. He looked uncomfortable, his scales shifting in patterns Lisa had learned meant distress. The Krell have been warriors for thousands of years. We thought this made us strong. You showed us that real strength is choosing not to fight until you must, and then fighting only as much as necessary. I take no pleasure in that lesson, Lisa said. I know. That's what makes it true. They stood in silence for a moment. Two people from different worlds trying to build something better from the ashes of conflict. Daniel found Lisa later that evening on the observation deck where she often went to think. Earth hung in the distance, blue and peaceful, seemingly unchanged by everything that had happened. The council approved your new position, he said, joining her at the window. Chief Mediator Morgan has a nice sound to it. I told them I didn't want it, and they told you the job chooses the person, not the other way around. Lisa smiled slightly. Did you come here to talk me into accepting? No, Daniel said. I came to tell you that whatever you decide, you did the right thing. You gave them every chance. You were patient until patience became permission for harm. You protected our people when no one else would. They watched Earth turn slowly below them, home to a species that had learned hard lessons about war and peace, about patience and action, about when to talk and when to fight. The galaxy will remember this, Lisa said quietly. They'll remember that humans tried everything before resorting to force. Good, Daniel replied. Maybe next time they'll listen before it gets that far. Lisa looked at him. Do you think there will be a next time? Daniel considered the question carefully. I think the galaxy learned that human patience has limits. I think they learned to respect those limits, and I think that's the best we could hope for. Far below them, Earth continued its eternal rotation, home to a species that had finally taught the galaxy an important truth. Patience was not weakness, peace was not surrender. And sometimes the kindest thing a civilization could do was show others exactly why they should never be pushed past their breaking point. The stars shone on, indifferent to the lessons learned in their light, while humanity stood watch, peaceful but never helpless, patient but never powerless, ready always to defend what mattered most. Why does every species run when humans finally lose their patience?